It's lovely to see you all. Thank you so much for coming. And welcome to our Parents Career Event. And we like to do parent career events because we do listen to you as an organisation. And what we want to do tonight is to really address some of your concerns as parents. Because when we hear you at the open evenings, we do sometimes hear parents say, "Oh, I'm not quite sure about my young person going into the creative arts. You know, I'm not quite sure that there's going to be a job for them at the end of it. And if they do get a job, is it going to be a stable job? Will it pay enough?" So there's lots of these issues that we wanted to address with you tonight. Because I think your experience is probably... Oh, next slide, 1 second. It's probably this young man here. What we like to call bedroom creatives. So somebody making beats in their bedroom, drawing in their bedroom, singing, dancing, all in their bedroom. And then I think parents sometimes wonder, "Oh, how on earth does that young person make a career in the creative arts?" It's very difficult. And so we're very lucky tonight that we have Sasha Corcoran, the principal here at Big Creative Academy, who has stood in your shoes. Exactly. Yes? Because we're thrilled to have Sasha and her son Ricky here tonight as well. So Ricky is the creative director at Service Studio, so a fashion designer. And as I say, what we're going to go through tonight is have a look at some of those concerns and what the opportunities are and what Sasha and Ricky's experience was. So I'm going to go through a little bit of labour market information at first as well, but these are the stats, and it'll only take 5 minutes or so, and then we can get on to the main event, which is Ricky and Sasha talking together. So, first of all, these are statistics from Creative UK, by the way. So, Creative UK is the membership body for the creative arts, and 1 in 5 people in the UK work in the creative arts. It's a massive, massive sector, and it is growing as well. So when you're thinking about your young person, will they get a job? Is there a job there for them? I can guarantee you, yes, there is. So it's 1 in 5 people work in the creative arts in the UK. There are 1 in 8 businesses that are creative in the UK as well. A third of the workforce in the creative arts work as freelancers. And the other little stat that I like to throw in there is 90% of those creative businesses are micro businesses, so fewer than 9 employees. So we're not even talking SMEs, we're talking micro businesses, which is why it's sometimes difficult to get a handle on the creative arts, because you don't necessarily see them. So we're very fortunate that we are in a creative enterprise zone here in Black Horse Road. So that's a designated creative enterprise zone by the GLA. And believe it or not, there are hundreds of businesses, creative businesses, in just this little part of Walthamstow. They are tucked on industrial estates, in shared offices, co-working spaces, those kind of things. And so you don't necessarily see them. But what the creative arts is very much collaborative. And so, yes, games designers do need digital artists. You know, TV and film producers, they need stylists and designers. Musicians need marketing. They need artists to design their music, album covers, that kind of thing. You know, fashion needs photographers. Yeah, it's all that graphic branding. And I should say, not just in the creative arts as well. You need creative people in all industries. What I often say is that every company needs a graphic designer. If you think about every company's social media feed, somebody is doing that, someone is curating that, and that is somebody with creative skills. And actually, creativity is the #1 skill that employers want. So your young people are in a good place to learn those skills and take them forward. So I'm just going to go into detail, just very briefly, on the different subject areas. Let's start with film and TV, which is huge, I'm sure, as you know. And actually growing, of course. And what we anticipate in the next few years is 21,000 jobs coming in the UK, in film and TV alone. You might know of the various studios that are opening up around East London. There's new ones in Enfield, there's some in Broxbourne as well. And we are teaching our young people to be able to go into entry-level jobs in those production studios. There's massive skill shortages in film and TV. What's happened with Brexit is lots of people who were here from the EU have left to go back to the EU, plus the pandemic as well. And so what you have is a shortage of employees with a growing demand for content. And so you have skills shortages at every level within the TV and film industry. So lots of opportunities for our young people. Arts and crafts as well. So very much now democratized by the internet and e-commerce. If you think about things like Etsy and Shopify, this is how people are selling their work these days. In fashion, artificial intelligence is massive in fashion and in art as well. And so this is assisting designers. This is not AI taking over. The robots aren't coming to get us yet. You know, they are assisting them. There's obviously lots of conversations as well in fashion about sustainability and slow fashion as well. And it is a growing sector. And so lots of opportunities in fashion. Music is an interesting one because obviously during the pandemic it did take a bit of a pummeling, but it is recovering. And I think what the pandemic showed us was actually how much we value music as an art form and how valuable it is to us as a society. You know, streaming is growing, vinyl is growing, music events are huge. You think about ABBA Voyage and that kind of thing. 70% of the workers in music are freelance. And if I just go to the next slide as well, and I'll include the performing arts in this too, because it's a huge part of the workforce is working freelance in both music and the performing arts. And this is something that we're really pleased to have introduced into our careers program this year. So students are actually getting sessions and they are being taught how to become freelancers and how to set up their own businesses. But just for those parents who have got young people who are doing performing arts courses here, that is a really growing industry as well. If you think about London's West End, there you go, it attracts 34 million people every year. And lots of immersive theatre these days as well. If you've seen things like the Burnt City and Punch Drunk's productions, it's a huge, huge area. And this is not me saying it. As I say, this is Creative UK, the membership body for the creative arts. It's also been recognised in the new London Skills Improvement Plan as well. So creative is one of the 4 priority sectors for skills shortages in London. So I'm going to pause there for a second, just in case we've got any questions on labour market information. No? Okay. Well, then that's a quick summary. Yeah? So I hope you understand that there are jobs out there, yeah, for your young people. And I hope you understand that there are stable jobs for your young people. It sometimes takes a bit of navigating, but that's what we're teaching the students here. And your young people can make lots and lots of money out of it as well. If you think about what they get paid in film and TV, for example, you know, huge, huge. So, if we've got any questions, then we'll go on to the main event, right? Which, as I say, is Sasha and Ricky. So, mum and son, and they're going to share their experience with us about what it's like growing up as a creative for both child and mum. So I'm going to sit down, right? And so you can take the microphones off if you want to, if you prefer not to have it on a stand.
I'm fine.
Because those are wireless microphones.
Yeah.
And I'm going to just move over here. So, right. Right, I feel I should have put some Tic Tacs on the table. I missed a trick. Right. So, let's... why don't you introduce yourself a little bit, Ricky, first, just so because people know who Sasha are. And so, why don't you tell us a little about what you're doing now, and then we'll go back and talk through how you got there.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name's Ricky. I am a fashion designer and creative director. I've been working in the fashion business I'm getting into my 10th year. Feels like my 1,000th. Yeah, I've kind of always been very focused on doing one thing. I was that kid that drew in the bedroom. I was definitely that kid who had wild delusions of creative grandeur, and was very lucky to have a parent who understood that although that's not necessarily a traditional route into work, there are ways to support it and to build confidence around aspiring to that sort of role. And I think this is a really helpful conversation to have, because I think ultimately when your kid turns around to you and it's like, I want to be a fashion designer, it's like them saying, hey, I want to be Rihanna. And you wonder, well, how are we going to achieve that? So hopefully today we can unpack some of those routes.
That's lovely, Ricky. Thank you. So, Sasha, right, so take us back. Right. Just describe, what it was like when you had Ricky and what your circumstances were.
Well, I was a teenage mum, so I think in some ways I grew up with Ricky. And I remember myself at school being very passionate about art, and actually art was the subject that I got my highest, that old O-level grade in. So I think art was something that I always loved and recognised as something that was quite therapeutic. So I think that maybe some of those artistic genes passed on to Ricky, certainly.
Yeah.
And so I certainly think, when I think about our home life, I wouldn't say the arts in necessarily the classical sense, in what we consider to be cultural capital, but there was certainly lots of music in our house. And so I think we were naturally a creative bunch. I was a big lover of the programme Changing Rooms, so I was forever trying to do my own interior design and things like that. So, I think there's certainly a creative lean in our household. But I guess as a young mum or a young parent, the resources weren't there. And we certainly didn't grow up in a household where I could afford for my young people to go to those dance classes on a Saturday and the music lessons and the private tutoring that maybe some young people can afford. So I think, going back to Ricky's point about being the bedroom creative, I think in some ways some young people don't have a choice because that's their resource, they're self-taught. So I think a lot of our early days would have been Ricky working through school and identifying what his strengths were and what he enjoyed. But certainly it was something that was done through his own passion, not through an income that could afford us to buy in that help necessarily.
So Ricky, what was it like from your perspective then? So tell us what your early childhood was like.
I think I was quite a quiet child. I don't remember being particularly outgoing, but I did love to draw. That was just, I think, my safe space. I was bullied at school, all that stuff. So I found a lot of safety in the arts and music. God, I loved music videos and I think I just naturally found something very comforting by the arts and seeing creativity and translating it in my own way. So that was kind of I think one thing to, I guess, lean into what my mum is saying a bit about the financing of a creative child. One thing I did get very quickly from living in a single parent family is resilience. From a very young age, I was privy to working for something. And that can be for a two-parent household. I think when you expose your child to working for something, I think before I even knew I wanted to be a designer, I was very well aware of working hard. So that's a bit of my childhood.
And so, Sasha, do you remember when you first noticed Ricky's creativity?
Yeah, his passion for the arts, and I used to love a band called Soul to Soul.
Yeah.
And they had these amazing album covers with these women with fantastic dreadlocks and things on the front. And Ricky was fascinated by these, and he would copy them and draw them.
Yeah.
So, and just his love of sort of characters in cartoons and recreating them and drawing them. So Ricky was very quick to notice art forms and then recreate them themselves. Wow. And also his love of performing arts. You know, he would. I mean, maybe he'd say he was shy, but put Ricky on a stage, and he loved it. So Ricky would often have his own shows being created upstairs. So he was very much into that expressive arts. But yeah, I think my first thing was seeing him recreate these Soul to Soul album covers in his own way. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh yeah, I still love those vinyl covers to this day.
Yeah,
I think they're beautiful.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So that's all at home. So tell us what your creativity and how you express your creativity at school. I'm just mindful that we're in an education setting.
So
how did that come about, Ricky?
I'm 150 years old at this point. So I think it was a bit different. You know, I think what's a beautiful thing today is a lot of young people have global access to learn about the arts and to see art from around the world. I guess in the 90s went in search of it. So things like anime, that was like my first gateway into like exploring creativity from different cultures. And at school, I used to read a lot of books, and I used to just kind of hide away and look at different things that were alien to me. Then what happened was the girls in my class could see that I could draw. And they used to make me draw them dresses. So, like, whether I wanted to or not, this was something that I was tasked with. And that kind of, in that moment, I really started to appreciate the joy that I could get from others by creating for them. And I think that was the first time I realized, especially with women, that you could do something that could make them feel good and empowered.
Amazing.
That was my school creativity story.
And is that the point that you realised that you wanted to do fashion?
Having a younger mum, I'm sorry if this is wildly boring. I feel very conscious that I'm just talking about myself.
That's what you're here for.
having a younger mother, you know, you were always into fashion and you were always very, I guess, current in your way of approaching things. I think I saw the power of clothing because I was surrounded by quite a lot of younger people, I guess, to me older then, but I saw the power of clothing and I loved very quickly how clothing can make people feel. And I don't know how I was so attuned to that at a young age, but I really loved that transference of like someone getting dressed up and feeling great. Yeah, I
can't really imagine you doing that, Sasha, actually.
Yeah. And did you really enjoy much? I'm still, No, I think that age, the lack of an age gap, I should say, probably between Ricky and I, growing up together, and me being, I like to think, quite young at heart, quite often, you know, he's being dragged around the shops with me. And then he started having opinions. Oh, you're not going to buy that, are you? Oh, you're not going to wear that, are you? So suddenly, actually, I realised he was a real asset, because what Ricky won't do is lie to you. Like I said to him today, do you like my trainers? He goes, have I commented on them? He goes, there's your answer. So Ricky, I think from a young age, actually was quite into like, you know, oh, you done your hair? Oh, is that your makeup? He was very in tune as to actually, you know, and how does that make mum feel? So that was quite a bonus, actually.
And so when did you guys start having a conversation about it as a career, a potential career going forward? I'm thinking like GCSEs, you know, and the choices that you made for your GCSEs, that kind of thing.
I think when you're a mum who's witnessing your child at secondary school suffering bullying and realising that arts and creativity has become their go-to and seeing there was a natural talent, I guess I pushed him a lot towards it because I could see how much he valued what he did and how much comfort it brought to him. And I was also mindful that if a young person isn't happy in their educational setting, sometimes the traditional academic route becomes by the by, because at that point you just want your child to be happy. And I saw him smiling when he was being creative. He wasn't smiling when he was forced into subjects where there were kids being not very nice to him in a classroom. And I guess in those days as well, there was much more of this lean towards an academic route. And if you're clever, you should do this. And I wasn't buying into any of that because I was at a place of, I just want my child to be happy. And I'm not buying into this rhetoric that you have to do A-levels and you have to do this. What's he happy is doing? because you've got years to worry about your career and what's a natural talent, what's he naturally drawn to. So I was probably quite pushy for him to follow it, actually, to a point where Ricky was a little bit resistant. I think there's times when he's felt like I've pushed him into this career. And certainly at sixth form, Ricky did a bit of art and design and he did performing arts, because there was a battle at one point as to whether performing arts was going to be something that he would follow. So I think I've always pushed him because I saw the talent was there. And I think sometimes there was a resistance from Rick slightly to say, I'm not sure if I want to do this. And I was like, no, you must do it, you must do it, you must do it. And getting the applications into the London College of Fashion and then going off to university, because I felt then, and I still do now, very passionate about his talent and very protective of his talent, because it's a tough industry to push your child into. Because if you haven't got the network, which we didn't have, if I didn't come from the background of the who you know, which we didn't have, and let's face it, the sector is 94% white, so we didn't necessarily tick the demographic of the people that enter the sector. In some ways, I was pushing him against the closed door. And there's a little bit of guilt about that, because I think Ricky will tell you even now, it's really tough. So, yeah.
Well, tell us then, Ricky, what was your perspective?
Start crying soon.
Yeah.
Well, I did bring some tissues.
I think, so for a lot of, in my head, I'd convinced myself that I was going to be a backing dancer for Britney Spears. That was exactly what I was planning to do with my life. But I guess this is where the first plot point, I guess, of discussing how it can help your young people. I think one thing that they don't teach you in Tottenham in the 90s is what your child can become in the creative art. There's no one telling you the list of jobs. I think when your child shows creativity, you instantly think that the only route for them to go down is they need to become a star. How are we going to make them this really important thing in this very vast industry? And what I do really appreciate, and what your kids will appreciate, is you letting them know we're going to find a way, and we're going to educate ourselves together in how we can make this work for you, because it's okay to say not everyone is going to be a star. It's okay to say we're going to work hard and we're going to get a great job, but your happiness is just as important as the career you're going down. And I think one thing I am grateful for, because at times I absolutely did not want to do fashion. It's hard. But what I am super grateful for is I was blessed with a parent who was like, we're going to figure this out and you're going to have to work hard, but there is a route here for you. And I think when you're met with that as a young person who wants to be creative, it doesn't feel so scary. And I think it's we have to educate ourselves on both ends, I think, parent and child, on what is actually possible beyond just trying to become this huge thing, if that makes any sense.
And I think on that, as a parent, I knew nothing about the creative sector as such. I, funny enough, grew into it because of work that I did at a previous role and working for one of the government sector skills councils. So I learned a lot more about the market research, the LMI, but actually the sector itself, growing up in a single parent family myself and not growing up in terms of wealth and money, I wasn't exposed to anything cultural. I'd never been to a gallery growing up. There was one local museum which was full of stuffed animals that my mum would continually take us to, and I'd be like, and that was about it. I'd never, ever went to a theatre production growing up. Yeah. So I was very mindful that actually Ricky was almost being brought up the same way I was, with very little exposure to creative arts. Yeah, no,
also, just to tack on to that, though, I think we're obviously talking about our experience, but if you do come from a family and there is disposable income and there is money there, that doesn't make for success either.
No.
So I think not having money and having disposable income to support your child's creative needs doesn't guarantee success either way. I think that's a complete separate battle that they need to forge for themselves. But yeah.
You see, that's interesting. When you're describing the backgrounds that you have, and actually, Sasha, you were saying that you didn't know a huge amount about the fashion industry as well. Did you ever secretly want him to do anything else? Did you ever think, oh no, actually, I would have preferred my Ricky to be a doctor or an accountant?
I think
wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, it wasn't going to happen. Maybe Britney Spears, backing dancer. Yeah, but no, I think honestly no, because I think if you can identify your young person's talent early on, but equally you can see what makes them happy. And even though, and Ricky would argue, not every part of this journey he has been happy on, but I can see the joy that the arts does bring to Ricky. Then I think as a parent, I would have been wrong to suggest otherwise. I think, going back to Ricky's point, I think sometimes you have to grit your teeth and say, I don't know if this is going to work, but I'll hold your hand through it.
That's lovely. That's really lovely. I'm going to pause there for a moment, just because. So we're up to the point where Ricky goes to college.
Yeah.
Have we got any questions from our audience?
What was your, from school to what college? What is your route? What is the names of the places you've been to, gone to?
Okay. So I went to a school called Gregsley Academy in Hornsey, and then I had quite a rough experience there. So my dad and my stepmom were very kind to have me in Luton, and I went to Luton sixth form, and for 1 year, which was I loved it there, it was great. And then I got accepted into the London College of Fashion to do my foundation when I was 17. And then I went there, and that prepared me for uni. They helped me, it was like the same sort of courses that I run here. So they prepped me for uni and kind of helped with that UCAS process. And then I went to the University of Hertfordshire, that's a whole other conversation I'm sure we'll get on to.
Tell us a bit about that decision-making, Ricky, about university.
So this goes back to the whole thing of there was no one really telling me what school I should go to, because fashion, are any of your kids doing fashion? No? I'm sorry if this is a little bit. So in all of the sectors, there are certain schools that they encourage your kids to go to for uni, certain establishments. And there was no one telling me that, Central St. Martin's, that's where you should go if you want to do fashion, or the London College of Fashion is where you should stay if you want to do fashion. And I think that actually hindered me, because I may have had the skill set to stay in the bigger colleges, but me being very I didn't know, I went to a smaller uni and had the amazing uni experience living on campus and all of that stuff. So the decision making, unfortunately, and that was a bit uninformed. And if I'd went back today, for the sake of my career, I probably would have pushed for the schools that may have helped my craft in a post-education sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and did you have an input in that, Sasha, into his decision making?
Again, maybe I don't know. I think at the centre of all of this, like he came back, it sounds really, I just wanted him to be happy. So I would often not try and challenge his decision-making process too much, because I wanted to be seen as a support. But I do remember something Ricky's saying, and I always remember this, Rick, and when he was looking, and one thing he did stand out for him was at the time was, and maybe it's an insecurity from our background, he said, if I go to London College of Fashion, I'm around maybe a certain type of young person that has been afforded a certain background, income and so forth, so I'll be battling to be the best. If I go to University of Hertfordshire, I've got more chance of being the best. So there was a consideration there by Ricky at the time. Yeah, but I remember that also being a conversation about how do I stand out from the crowd, and where do I place myself to try and be a bit taller than the rest.
It's a very interesting thing for.
Did you come back and challenge that though? Because obviously as a parent, you wanted to go to the better place. Were you aware of that at the time, or?
I think
you let him decide? Because I was going through this whole second thing, and I said to Stanley, it's up to you, and he wanted to go to Hagston. I thought, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can't help it. We know best.
Yeah.
We know overall. So I mean.
Yeah. But I think when he said that to me, I was like, that makes perfect sense. Because I wanted him to be comfortable. And if he felt that the young people at University of Hertfordshire were going to be more his kind of people, having gone through a difficult school life and never felt like he fitted in, I wanted him to feel like he fitted in. And if the University of Hertfordshire was a space where he could fit in and be around like-minded people from similar backgrounds, I felt a comfort in that. when there was some concern about will he fit in with the kids at London College of Fashion, because some of them are from very, very different backgrounds, I think I was looking for a safety net for him.
See, it's interesting because now in hindsight, and this is where it comes back to, I think, parent and student educating themselves on the best routes. I do think if we had the opportunity to know a bit more how that could affect me post-education, I would have probably loved to have been pushed into a school that could have pushed me forward a bit more. But in saying that, I had the most incredible uni experience, and I'm doing just fine. So I think there is pros and cons to both, but I know to this day, I'm 35 years old and I'm a creative director. I still get asked where I studied. And it still, for some reason, is an important thing to people in my industry. So I do see some benefit in choosing the right school to propel them post-career.
I also think
post-studies.
It also smacks of what we're trying to do here through tonight's event is that very education that actually as a parent I never received. And actually I think in those days creativity was still looked at like, really? You had teachers dying to talk to the parents of the doctors and the lawyers and all of that. Nobody was queuing up to talk to the parents of the creatives. And we were left a little bit to our own devices. And if you don't come from a background of a who you know, and I didn't have the experience to know what universities were the best for him, I think, I went to the default of what's going to make him happy.
I'm also super aware, though, like, I know what I was like when I was 17. You couldn't tell me nothing. So if you turn around to me and goes, you're going to LCF, I would have been, no, I'm not.
Yeah, because you do pick your battles as well as a parent, don't you? Yeah.
It's choices. It's like, as a parent, I think we all, I'm not a parent, but as a parent or as a young person, I think, going to your young person with like free choices that equally could all really help them, it puts the ball back in their court. How about, let's look at these three together, and in the end, they're choosing. So I think there's a conversation to be had with that.
No, I think that's good advice for our parents.
For a non-parent.
So tell us a bit what university was like for you, Ricky. So you said you enjoyed yourself. You had the university experience.
So, yeah, I did. Uni.
Did you tell your mum?
I remember dropping him off on his first day. Yeah, I don't know how many pot noodles we had in a bag, but I certainly remember dropping him off.
I loved university because it allowed me to, have that experience. But one thing, and I've taught fashion. I taught fashion for 5 years, and I used my experience at uni as a huge example. I was not the best. I almost failed my first year. I didn't take it seriously enough. I thought I was there to pretend I was in like Hollyoaks or something, and I was having the best time. But then it became what I think this education system does is gives these kids such a level of support and that pastoral care that when they get to uni, they don't realize they have your loan. They don't care if you pass or fail. So when I went to uni, I think I had a bit of that where I suddenly didn't have parents around, and my teachers, I either wanted this or I didn't. And it wasn't until my maybe the end of the second year, beginning of the third year, I decided I wanted to be the best fashion designer I could be. It was like a switch. I was like, I want to be the best. And I worked my butt off. To the point where I became that annoying student who like hand up every time. And it was almost like I was resisting falling in love with why I was there. And I suddenly fell in love with it and knew that this was exactly who and where I wanted to be. And then I passed, and that was nice.
Well, it's lovely to hear that you really found where you belonged. You really found your passion.
Yeah.
And so university must have really consolidated that for you.
It took, because I think I think it's ridiculous that we live in a world where we expect an 18-year-old to decide who they want to be for the rest of their lives. And I find that pressure that we put on young people, and I think I spent the first 2 years deciding if this is who I even wanted to be. And thank God I didn't fail along the way, because I would have been really in trouble. But yeah, uni allowed me to figure out that I am good at this. And if I do want to be good at this, I can be. Yeah. And I think that's what university should also be about, discovering if this is actually also what I want for myself. Because if you have a degree, you can still get work if that's still not the end. Your degree that you get does not stop you from moving on to something else afterwards.
Yeah. You're building up your employability skills.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Our first job is never our last job.
So tell us a bit about the jobs that you have done along the way that have supported your career in fashion.
So I think it goes back to that thing of parents being an example. I was never afraid of work. I think it's important that if your kids can get a job just doing anything, it really just helps them build their work ethic. I have been. My first job was when I think it was like 14. I got paid £15 a day to sweep hair off a shop floor in a hairdresser's. Yeah. But then I was a cleaner at college. I used to clean colleges in the morning when I was studying at LCF. At uni, I sold sofas in Habitat at the weekends to pay for my course materials. But then when I left uni, I got employed from my graduate exhibition, and I was working for a garment manufacturer, and it was the worst job of my... I thought I'd made it. I was like, offered this job as a designer. I was like, oh my God, I've done it. Straight out of uni. And I was screamed at for hours to churn out designs. So I've had some rough experience in the fashion industry. I had some internships where the designer would throw hangers when he was upset.
The Gordon Ramsay of the design world, yeah.
I think fashion design is a volatile space, and you have to be tough and you have to be resilient. I think the arts are a volatile space, and this is where it goes back, I think, to that thing of there are other jobs that don't put you on this course to try and become this big thing. So maybe if I was doing more behind the scenes roles in fashion, like editing or journalism, it may have been a softer entry point, but I wanted to be a creative director, so I had to deal with creative directors. I took a traditional route. I started off with the manufacturing job, which paid. I left it, and I went into luxury retail. So I decided I wanted to work in luxury fashion design, and because I had to pay rent and there was no financial support to let me do internships, which were for free back then, I was working, selling clothes 3 days a week, and then doing internships a couple of days a week. But it worked, and it helped. One thing that I was shameless. When I used to work in retail, I used to slip pictures of my work into the customers' bags. I should have been fired, but I wanted to be this thing so bad that I was using my day job as an opportunity to be seen and try and get myself out there a little bit.
I mean, one thing I would say to parents is absolutely get your young person into retail. It really helps. It humbles you, it does. But it will really help your young person to be able to communicate with the general public and to be able to understand what people want from you and then be able to deliver it. And it's all about those communication skills, which are really, really important in the creative arts. Sasha, can I just ask you then? So Ricky has described his early career, and at what point did you see his fashion career really forming?
I think when I used to go and visit him on Bond Street, and even then, he's not just selling the clothes, but understanding the detailing of those clothes, understanding the design that went into those clothes, understanding how to style people. I mean, it wasn't just a case of, he's standing in a shop saying, how can I help you? Ricky was working with people, yes, that had lots of money and could spend, but his knowledge of the garments was amazing. And his ability to look at somebody that walked in and know how to piece together an outfit. That's when I saw that this was a real passion. This was something that Ricky understood fashion. He understood how to make a woman walk into a shop and leave feeling fabulous, which is a big part of it. And Ricky started to then explore the identity of women in a much wider pool to understand actually how his fashion and how his clothing used to empower females. And when I started hearing him talk with that level of commitment to the cause, if you want, and the language, I started to realise this is not just I like to make clothes. It almost become a bit of a campaign or a crusade for him. And I think that was the stepping stone for me to see that actually he gets it. He gets that fashion is not just about people wearing something. It's much deeper. The psychology almost of fashion, Ricky really began to understand.
So you always thought he would make it?
I think
fashion designer.
I think you owe it to your child to believe that they can make it. I don't believe we should sell kids a pipe dream. I think we have a duty of care to our kids to always be honest. I think, if your kid can't sing, tell them they can't sing. I think we have to be honest, we've seen it on X Factor where somebody rules out a child and says, yeah, and they're all going, why would you put your child in that position? So I think, I've always believed he could achieve and do it because I saw the talent. I saw what he was capable of. And also I've seen other people who are far more expert in the arena see his talent. So they almost come in and verify what I knew already. So I think it's something, when the experts started tapping him on the shoulder and I started seeing Ricky win some awards and win accolades, I thought, okay, I wasn't wrong. I got it right. I was right to push him.
But just to tack on to that, I think one thing, irregardless of the direction your young person goes in, I think the one thing that will carry them to any job, they have to love it. And I think that's the conversation you need to have with them from now. Like, do you love this? Because if you don't, and like I said, I got to that realization in my third year of uni. So it does come or it doesn't. But having that conversation early just makes them understand, because if you don't love it or if you don't think you're going to love it, there are 100,000 kids who are going to love it that bit more than you. I think that's a really important conversation to have.
That's good advice, Ricky, I think. So bring us up to speed then, Ricky. Right, so about your career. So I'm thinking about your own fashion label when you set up Wesley Harriet. Tell us a bit about that and how you made that work and what you were doing alongside that as well.
So I have a lot to... so I started teaching. I actually started teaching for this organisation. So the way it kind of went for me, I started to get a few little jobs when I was still working in retail. I started actually doing costumes for the X Factor and just sewing them in my bedroom for some of the contestants when I do like the live shows and stuff. So my actual fashion career actually started in music, and which is nice, like a circular moment because I love music. And then I decided I really wanted to give myself a shot, and I got an opportunity to teach for this organization, to teach fashion with the experience that I'd had in the industry leading up. I'm giving you a very short, abridged version. But what I decided to do, in my infinite wisdom, was I was going to teach here from 9 to 5, and then I was going to stay here until like 10, 11 at night and sew.
Which you did.
Which I did for about, that was 2016, and I did that right through till 2019. Every school holiday, I would come in the days. Every night I would stay and sew, to the point you guys were like, Ricky, you can't stay here. But I was given an opportunity and I took it with both hands. And then I won an award with ASOS. I won the fashion. I have a habit of applying for things and being like, not going to happen. And I applied for this ASOS competition, which was a fashion discovery thing, and it came with some investment. And I won it. I don't know how. It still shocks me. And I got a little investment. Put that straight. Like, in my mind, I could have just spent that investment on some really nice things, but I put it straight back into my projects. Mm-hmm. And then I got invited to do a fashion show in New York. Mm-hmm. And then I got offered an opportunity to work for my dream brand, which was Vetements in Switzerland. So I moved to Zurich and I left teaching, which was sad, but I've been on this trajectory and I finally got given an opportunity. Again, very abridged.
And very modest, I would say, Ricky, actually. So you set up your own fashion label.
Yeah, it did all right.
Yeah, and I remember you coming into work with your printed labels that were going to go on the clothes, and you were super excited. You go, Vicky, look at these. And it was lovely. It's really lovely. It was really lovely that your hard work really paid off. Because quite often in the creative arts, you do have to patchwork your career together and do one thing alongside another.
But that's another thing as well that I would encourage. Again, I keep bringing up hard work. I was never the most talented in my class. I was the worst sewer. I'm better now. But I was never the most talented. But my God, I was always the hardest working. Like, I was competitive and I wanted to be really good. So I think, you know, it is not always a case of being naturally gifted. It's about putting in the work. It will come if you put in the work. It literally is that.
Also, I think on the flip side of that, the model we have here at the Academy to have teachers that are in industry and relevant. When our young people see our teachers working in the evening, you know, we had a media teacher that did photography. We've got resident artists, and all members of staff here are, you know,
we did projects together.
Yeah, you know,
teachers.
Are encouraged to stay and work in the evenings and make use of the facilities. And the kids stay behind for enrichment, and they see this. I mean, Ricky had young people working with him sometimes in the evenings. It gives them a flavour of what it looks like. It gives them a reality check that actually this is hard.
But I also was very conscious, especially when I was teaching, and I hope that teachers continue to do this with your young people. So just to set the scene, I stayed up for 3 days working on a project for Ariana Grande. And it was for her tour, and I was so excited. And I was, again, teaching by day, not sleeping by night. And I've churned out 9 pieces for Ariana, sent it away, and then none of them got worn. 2 of them got copied. I was distraught. And I shared it with the students. And I was quite visibly upset about it. But I wanted them to understand that I did all this stuff and I'm proud of it, but it did not work. And that's okay. And I think it's really important. Teaching was such a special time because I was very much a student of my craft whilst I was teaching them my craft. And to share those experiences with your young people, I think it really gives them an insight into what this is like. So yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, you've had some amazing breakthrough moments, of course. Even if you don't know Ricky's brand, right, you really should check it out, Service Studio, and look at some of the amazing collections that he's done. And some of the amazing people that he's dressed as well. There's a list of celebrities, I promise you. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the ethos behind your brands, Ricky, and the kind of woman that you're dressing.
I think, again, to bring it back to your young people, I'm sure there are certain things in them and their practice that you see as a through line. There may be certain things they always like to do or certain things they connect with. My thing with fashion has always been about addressing the depiction of women in modern society. I have, in my experience, found the expectations of women to be vast and unfair. And I saw my contribution to fashion as an opportunity to armor women in society to go through a lot of the nonsense that they have to go through very stylishly. So the brand that I creatively direct now, we design a high level of design that we introduce to women of different sizes, shapes, ages, at different stages of their lives. But it's like I never ever skip on any detail because I want to try and make really beautiful garments for different women to feel equally special. It's that simple.
So definitely a message of inclusivity.
Yeah, for sure. I think I grew up on an estate in Tottenham where there were different types of women doing everything they could. So I want to create incredible things for different types of women.
I mean, certainly at the last catwalk show at the London Fashion Week, you know, the range of models that were used. You know, I was in awe. I mean, I was in proud mum mode. But when I step out of that, just watching this range of women in their 60s, teenagers, you know, people from Muslim faith. Yeah, everybody was on that catwalk. And the way Ricky dressed them, every one of them was powerful in their own right. It was fabulous.
Well, that message of inclusivity actually is ringing in my ears, Sasha, because it's one of the values that we have here at the Academy, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you know.
So he's obviously got that from you.
Yeah, and I think, and it's something I'm passionate about, because I think identity is everything. And I look at, you know, I worked for a government sector sales council many, many years ago, probably going back 20 odd years, and the sector was 94% white, predominantly middle class. It's still 94% white. There is an issue. It is a bit of a who you know sector, and we do need to provide a breakthrough for our young creatives. And that's why I'm very proud that when I look at my staff team, they're around sort of 66% coming from minoritised communities. That represents my student cohort. Our ambassadors come from different backgrounds. It's about ensuring that everything in this academy reflects the community with which our young people grow up in. Not just from a race perspective, but from a sexuality, from a social background, from a class background, everything. Because I believe that you can't have creativity without diversity. They go hand in hand. So, and also I think as a mother of mixed race children, I'm very aware that they face a level of racism and stereotyping that I wouldn't as a white person. So I'm also protective of them and making sure their voices are heard and they are not just stereotyped as to being this or that. So yeah, when I see Ricky at London Fashion Week with this diverse range of models, as a young man from a diverse background, with people applauding him and cheering him, I'm like, okay, that's a breakthrough moment. For not just him, but for the sector. Yeah. Because it was really interesting on back of some of the stories that have been in the media recently attached to equality issues. And they're looking for people from black backgrounds to speak to. You know, that's when Ricky's phone starts ringing, when they want that person to recognise. I mean, and you spoke about that, Ricky, and you sometimes find that quite tokenistic.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're looking for sound bites from somebody of colour. Yeah.
Quick question I have. On your fashion course here, as a percentage, how many are girls, how many are boys? And the second part of this question, and this will definitely come to you, Ricky, is why at the top of the tree it's all men dressing women?
Oh.
Why is that?
You answer that first.
Oh, okay. I have such an issue. As a man, I haven't.
Women know women better than men know women. What they go through, what they need.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's such a layered question because there's like, we could have this chat for hours. But I think ultimately, how can I break this down? Systemically, over decades, I think there is an undercurrent societally of men knowing better, which is rubbish. And I think there is this understanding that what a woman is wearing is to appease a man, thus the man designing it for her allows her to be appeasing to the... Do you see? It's this weird... That's my, psychological breakdown of it. Now, I think that fashion is wholly broken in the people it places in the top. I think there are not enough top designers that are women. I think there are not enough top designers that are from different backgrounds. Right now, one of the biggest conglomerates is literally all white guys designing women's wear, which I think is a very narrow perspective on how we can dress people. I don't have an answer, but I agree that it's weird, and I don't think it's right. But I think all we can do is push and cheer and encourage people from different backgrounds to try and take up some of that space.
And that's what's interesting, because when you look at around 80% of our fashion students will be girls and 20% will be boys. But if I suppose it's a bit of work we could do research-wise, but you might find it's the boys that are making the way through. So it's interesting because actually at the bottom, it's stereotypically, it's a girl's profession. But then it's the men that seem to be making it through to the top. Would you agree, Rick? I mean, you're in the industry.
Yeah, I don't know why, because I can list off so many great female designers. Also in my team, most of the creatives that I have working with me are women. I could never be so arrogant to design women's. It takes a village, by the way. It's not just me sewing these garments. But I could never be so arrogant to dress a woman without the consultation of a woman. So you can ask my staff. Poor Christina is draped in something for hours. I'm like, is this comfortable? Does this fit you? Do you like it? And sometimes she'll be like, no, I do not. I'm like, right, Ben. So a lot of my ideas are filtered through a woman's perspective.
Another thing that stands out from what Ricky does design for women. Ricky's typically done a lot of designs where a lot of the detail is in the back. And one thing he always said to me is, I always want a woman to be remembered when she leaves the room, not just when she walks in. And that always stands out for me. It's those little
cringing at myself.
I know, but those are the things that sit with me. And when you go back to that question about how did you know, when he used to come out with things like that, and I thought that's genius though, because it's so true. You know, we're not just these front-facing. Oh, remember me when I'm leaving. So those little. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
All that.
Yeah, all that. Yeah. But it's those little gems that Ricky would come out with across it. I know. Yeah, he'll say no. That's decades ago. I said that. But they're things that resonate with me still.
Yeah, no, there's definitely work to be done, I think, in what you're saying.
So on this fashion, so what they sort of see this as well, they must be sort of thinking it. What encouragement is there? If you're sort of all working away, but at the end of the day, it's all going to be men the same.
Yeah. I think we get such a limited time with them, and I think we throw everything at it in that 2 years that we have them. We expose them as, at Maya and the careers team and Vicky, they do a huge amount to get them into work placements, work experience, get them off to university trips, working with the University of the Arts. So we do everything to be transparent and honest. But going back to Ricky's point, once we hand them over to university, a lot of that safety net that we provide does go. And then I think that resilience that Ricky talks about and that ability to want to fight to the top. And I think in a society now where the cost of living crisis, everything else that's going on, and a lot of the mental health post the COVID and everything else, I think for young people to be said, right, there you go, uni now, fight your way to the top. It's going to be a minority that have got that fight in them.
But I think as well, coming from the teaching perspective that I had working with students here, you could identify quite quickly some learners who really want this. And you could identify some learners who liked it, but we're not sure if they wanted this. And that's okay. So what I would do, you treat every learner differently. What I would do for the ones who wanted it, I'm like, right, you're going to do this and you can do it. For the learners who weren't sure they wanted it, I'm like, right, you're going to work hard, so at least when you leave here, you know that you can apply that ethic to what you do want to become. So I think it's about instilling young people as quickly as possible with the mentality that whatever it is, you can do it. There is you're going to have to work hard, but you can. There's no I can't, you can.
There's lots of diversity within our fashion course, actually. So a lot of our learners go on to do interior design, for example, or they go into journalism or styling, those kind of routes. But Ricky, I'm not going to let you off the hook here, right? And so I'm going to ask Sasha about Ricky's breakthrough moments and what it's like, being that proud mom. So describe some of those for us.
I think...
It's cringe, time to cringe, Ricky.
I mean, I think there was a time he ran into the staff from here and said, when he V-Files was the big New York runway, and I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Bravo series of the Housewives of New York and all that. These people were in the audience. And I remember just before he was going to put the models onto the stage, he sort of sent me a video of the... I won't even put an auditorium, it's this huge...
It was Barclays Stadium, it was like the O2 Arena.
Yeah. And he's like, this is where... And I'm like, oh my God. So I'm here, he's in New York. And at that point, I felt very protective of him. Because although we had a team around him and he's incredibly talented and doesn't necessarily need me, this is a big moment for him. So I can remember just seeing all the images that come out of these shows, because I'm not there, so I'm getting everything sort of on a delay. But and I think sometimes I look in on it and like, did my boy do that? Because it is a craft, it is a skill. And one thing I've always enjoyed, and Ricky posted something a little while ago on his Instagram, where you see his original sketch and then you see the model wearing it. And that, to me, is the biggest thrill, because I love to see what comes out of his head. And he's an amazing artist when it comes to sketching his designs. And then when you see the physical, the model in it, it's just baffling to me, that because I don't have that creative brain to do that process. So that process is me. So the V-Files in New York I thought was phenomenal. Certainly even before that, winning the ASOS competition and standing there while they announced the winners. And again, I'm like, you know, because getting seed funding, you know, getting investment is so hard. So for him to win that money for that investment, I thought, okay, this is a major moment for him. And then just seeing him in his current role as design director, and just seeing, you know, when he said to me, Selfridges are stocking the clothes, I'm like, Selfridges? And I haven't been down there yet, but I'm dying to go in there and somebody to say to me, oh, can I help you? No, it's fine, my son designs them. But it's that. And then he's so modest. So he casually posts these things. Oh, you know, one of the Kardashians wearing it. Kylie Minogue is currently wearing his clothes in her latest video. Shania Twain, for those of us a bit older, is wearing some of his stuff at the moment. You know, Cardi B, the more younger people will know. You know, and it's all of that. And he just casually posts it. And I'm like, what do you mean Cardi B's wearing? Yeah, you know, and I'm in awe of it, because it's a world that I don't pretend to understand, and I would never be around these people. And there's my son putting clothes on their back. You know, that boy from Tottenham who went through a really difficult time in school, who had a mum pushing him to a career that he sometimes was like, I'm not sure if you want to do this. And now he's got people who are global megastars walking around in things that his head has designed. And it's that. It's almost not the garment. It's the fact that what they're wearing has come out of his brain. And so I'm in awe of that, and always incredibly proud, but mindful that it's not my hard work that's got him there, it's his. So I can't take the accolade for it. Maybe just some of the artistic genes.
Well, what I can certainly see is a lot of work ethic that's come from you. This is what Ricky was describing earlier. I mean, huge congratulations for everything that you've achieved, Ricky. But as I say, this is your life.
Yeah, we're going to will somebody out.
Old school teachers jumping out of the woodwork or anything like that. Yeah. But I would really. It's a shame that my account is just logged out, because I would have shown you some of his work.
Oh no!
Yeah,
whatever
absolutely.
we do.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely huge congratulations for everything that you've achieved, Ricky. And so, just as a final question, then, you know, so what do you think the best things are that your mum has done for you?
Allowed me to be me. And I think that when you as a parent really just allow your kid to be, and to find ways for them to harness what they just naturally are, that can propel them to great things. And by great things, I mean happiness. Because at the end of the day, that's the goal, to ascertain happiness. You reel off these ridiculous things I've done. It's just a job. And I'm very privileged to have that job. But the biggest privilege is of getting to a place where I am paid to do what makes me happy. And for your young people, that can be a director, that can be a writer, that can be a backing dancer in a small or big space. But as long as they're happy and being paid to do what makes them happy, I think that is the biggest achievement. So.
That's lovely. Thank you for those words, Ricky. I think we'll have those as our closing words before people start getting the tissues out. But as I say, huge congratulations, and thank you so much for being so open with us, for both of you for being so open with us. Well done, Sasha, for bringing up such an incredible human being.
Oh, God.
I know about
But yeah, I really hope that the parents have found this a really useful conversation and had an insight into what it's like having a creative young person and how they can go about creating their careers. We will put a recording of this onto our website. So thank you very much, and congratulations again.
Thank you. No,
Thank
it's been a
you.
pleasure. Thank you.